During previous conflicts between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas in the Gaza Strip, Egypt was able to play the role of a mediator and a negotiator between the two parties. Egypt had good relations with Israel and also had relations with Hamas and close ties to the United States. But a significant change has taken place in the political leadership in Egypt. Mohamed Morsi, the new president, and indeed the parliament, most of them derive from the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a political Islamist group, of which Hamas in Gaza is an offshoot. So Egypt has shifted its allegiances significantly and forcefully to the side of Hamas and the Palestinians. When I was in Egypt last month, there was a commemorative event in which the government of Egypt was commemorating the sacking of Jerusalem in 1187 by Saladin, and Hamas's political leader Khaled Mashal was there. So they've firmly taken sides. The Egyptian Prime Minister Hashim Kandil has described Israel's airstrikes as a disaster. And what this means, I think, is that there is now one fewer possible mediator, and that means fewer off-ramps, I think, on the road to this, what appears to be an escalating conflict between Israel and Hamas.
The update is an interesting event every fall, and sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. Right now, it comes at a time when the government has made its most prevalent slogan, jobs, growth, and prosperity. So I guess the question is, how does what Minister Flaherty said affect their ability to convey that message? The big takeaway from the update was that the deficit is higher, a few $1 billion higher than was expected this year, and the projected date for balancing the books has been pushed off 1 year to 2016-17. I doubt that very many Canadians are really that worried about a few billion on the deficit and 1 year off in the projection. But what they might worry about is the underlying reason that the numbers have gone south a bit, and that's that commodity prices have softened. All the government's outlook now for the medium term for commodity prices have gotten worse, and they're assuming less government revenue as a result. If that turns out to be true, then a lot of the political messaging that Prime Minister Harper has hooked himself to, which includes promoting the oil industry, especially mining, other resource development, becomes a little weaker politically. If we're coming into an era when the sort of buoyant economy based on those commodities is not as reliable and not as robust as it once was, then the government needs to develop a second line of economic messaging, probably around manufacturing and service industries. And to me, the question going forward is whether or not they can adjust that jobs, growth, prosperity message for a different kind of economy, one where resources are not always booming.
That's sort of the question of the moment down in the United States. I would have to say that it looks unlikely in the short term. I think this fiscal cliff discussion and the economy take precedence. If you listen to the president's answer earlier this week when he was asked specifically about a carbon tax, he definitely talked about the environment as a long-term project that needed to be dealt with. So the question isn't sort of whether the U.S. is going to end up with a carbon tax in the next 6 months. It's whether the U.S. can go another 3 years without putting a price on carbon. At least that's the question for Canadian policymakers. The Prime Minister has said that we need to harmonize our environmental policies with the United States, but his party has gone all in on saying that the carbon tax or cap and trade, both of those policies are terrible, awful things. So what happens now to the Conservatives if the U.S. decides to say we're going to put a price on carbon? And can the Conservatives possibly, if that ever happens, can the Conservatives possibly walk back everything they've said over the last 3 months? It's an interesting dilemma, and it's going to be an issue to watch for the next 3 years for sure.